I've been thinking about an Eddie and Steve Pride and Prejudice AU for a while now, and I have enough thoughts formulated that I can't not talk about it. So I just want to kind of dump everything here. So it starts obviously with Steve as Darcy and Eddie as Elizabeth, and then I extend it to Robin as Bingley and Chrissy as Jane. And it's interesting fleshing out this AU because it doesn't totally work as like a one-to-one parallel between Stranger Things and Pride and Prejudice, but the places where you kind of like push it to reveal really interesting things. Like when you put those two texts in close conversation with each other, it's kind of really fun in what it reveals about both. I really like the idea of Hopper and Joyce as the Bennet parents because it really lends itself well to Jonathan being Mary and Lydia and Kitty being Elle and Will. I struggle with that because I really want Wayne to be in there as the parental figure for Eddie, but I can't get over the idea of having Joyce saying like the Harrington house is let at last. So for right now, that's my working kind of formulation. And then on Steve's side of things, I actually think that Nancy makes a really interesting Caroline Bingley. And if you wanted to push it and say like, well, what if Caroline and Mary met and like ended up together? Like that would be kind of interesting. But more specifically, just like looking at the relationships around Steve/Darcy, I think that his relationships with Wickham and Georgiana are like the most interesting. And with Georgiana, the one that I really like in a sweet way is Dustin, obviously, specifically because I can really picture the like twirl hug from the 2005 movie as like a translation of the Scoops handshake. But I more enjoy the complexity of Max being Georgiana. And that's, of course, inherently tied to figuring out who Wickham would be in this. And I have a few ideas. My first instinct is Billy, because I think it's interesting to imagine a version of Pride and Prejudice where George and Georgiana Wickham grew up on the Darcy estate, and over time, George Wickham alienated himself from the Darcy family, and Georgiana ended up adopted by them. I think it adds a really interesting dimension to the manipulative aspect of Wickham and Georgiana's relationship, and it adds dimension to Wickham and Darcy's kind of fight over the custody of Georgiana if we make it Max and Billy. And I think Billy is the character who has the most interesting, complex, kind of fucked up relationship with Steve, but he has zero interaction with Eddie, and his interaction with Elle, which will become relevant in a second, is minimal. And so he's not totally my favorite character for that. And so from that, I started thinking like, what if you had like Henry/Vecna as Wickham? That provides parallels for how he fucks with Max as Georgiana, Elle and Will as Lydia, and Eddie as like the cast figure. And he's just such an interesting two-faced character. I think you could really push him in that role. But yeah, I'd love to hear other people's thoughts if you have them.